I'm Jordan, and I'm here with Karen Richards. Karen came to visit us from England, I guess, but you've been all across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be okay just to tell a little bit about your story? How you...
Sure, what would you like to know specifically?
Well, I think there's an awakening part, or so maybe the process you went through. Or...
Okay. There appeared to be an experiential recognition of life as it really is, if we can describe it like that, with no active spiritual seeking. It just appeared to happen as a result of suffering, intense suffering. Life appeared not to be working, and there was an inability to micromanage life anymore. Every aspect of life was seeming to fail. I was a nurse working as a critical care nurse specialist, and the job was very stressful. In addition to that, there were managerial pressures, difficulties in terms of the way the organisation was supporting me to do that role, and also a limited number of staff to do the job effectively. Other areas of life seem to be in disarray as well: personal relationships, family relationships, in addition to the pressures of daily living, running a home and maintaining a home as well, and everything that goes along with that. And so working full time, trying to manage all those things was just unsustainable, and health was beginning to suffer as a direct result of all those things. It was just an inability to manage, and it seemed overwhelming. And as a result of attempting to manage, there was a health challenge that seemed to present itself that caused me to stop. And as a result of that stopping, it seemed to create a space for the experiential recognition of life as it truly is.
Was that in like a moment of recognition? Or?
It appeared to be a moment of recognition where there was a time-bound recognition that opened up to the timeless nature of life.
Okay. And you weren't looking for that?
Not at all. I mean, I was at an unconscious level looking for that, but I didn't realise that I was looking for that. I was just trying to find relief in whatever way I could. We're pleasure-seeking organisms, ultimately, I think. There is this drive for satisfaction, there is this drive for peace, there is this drive for pleasure and enjoyable experiences. And in that drive is really hidden a desire to recognise what we truly are beyond the form that we appear to experience.
So is that what recognition means? Is that something different?
Recognition really relates to the seeing through of the personal.
Okay.
So it is an apparent recognition. The idea of who you are seems to recognise something which is beyond who you are, which is the true essence of who you are. So it's a bit of a paradox. There is the ultimate recognition, which really is about recognising what's always here. So it doesn't happen to somebody. It happens in the absence of somebody. It's like the idea of who you are gets completely out of the way, and what is always here is recognised to be the case.
So is that what happened with you from that experience of the illness and the...
It appeared that the illness created a stopping, and in that stopping, the idea of who I am seemed to get completely out of the way in order to recognise what is always the case, what never goes anywhere.
This might seem silly, but did that happen like in the morning or in the night, or is there a moment that you knew that it?
With memory, I can recall it to be an experience that happened in the evening.
Okay. And did you know what it was then when it did happen?
Well, life was in such a disarray of suffering that I was speaking to a friend about what I perceived to be the state of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he had something he wanted me to listen to, and that it would be a good idea if we spent some time going through what was happening, and then if I could maybe be receptive to listening to something. And I had no idea what that was. So during the evening, he'd actually forgotten about what he'd asked me to look at. So I reminded him, and he said, okay, well, let's look at that. And he put on an interview by someone I now know to be John Wheeler, who's a non-dual teacher from the United States. And the interview was a radio show, an hour long, which there were commercial breaks, and during the first 15 minutes, commercial break came on, and during that moment I said to him, he's saying we are awareness. And my friend said, yes, you are. And that phrase seemed to promote a recognition of the timelessness of reality.
Okay. And so from that point on, then everything's been beautiful and no problems? Did you get well right away?
No, it's really just the beginning of abiding and surrendering to that timeless nature that we already are, that's always here. So I think there is an idea that life suddenly then becomes blissful. What is blissful is actually knowing that there is freedom no matter what experience is happening. And
you're confident in that?
Yes.
Okay. Because the confidence comes through your voice as you talk about it.
Yes, there is no doubt that that is the case. And so it's remembering to experientially recognize that ever more deeply in each and every moment.
Recognize the
timeless nature of true reality, shall we say.
Okay. Life
as it truly is.
And so it's not even to say that I am the timeless nature of true reality. That wouldn't be correct, right? Is that too picky with words?
What does it relate to when we say I? Can we find an I? Can we find that timeless nature? You know we're present and aware right now. Mm-hmm. There is an experience, and there is something that is knowing that experience. Can we find that which knows the experience? The experience of whatever is appearing here right now. Something knows that experience. But to say I, can we find it in our direct experience? And yet it is. We cannot deny that we're present. We cannot deny that we're aware. But there is no graspable, locatable, identifiable structure to that.
So we couldn't say that you found yourself. It's more like
I found the absence of myself.
Okay.
And that absence is that in which everything appears and dissolves.
And then something becomes strongly committed to that, or strongly knowing of that, or...
It's like the switching of allegiance to who we believe ourselves to be, to surrendering to what we know to be true, beyond experience, and yet is inseparable from experience.
Okay. And what I believe I know from my experience is the switching of allegiance isn't just a conscious wanting it or desire for change.
It's like the absence of desiring, almost. It's like the complete melting and acceptance to life as it is happening right now. the personal desires fall away. And there is just, if there is any desire, it's desiring life just as it is. And loving life just as it is. And not wanting anything other than how things are.
So is it worthwhile to consciously try to not want desires?
Well, that's just another form of seeking.
Okay.
Relating to the idea you have about who you are that wants to try and do something perfectly. That wants to try and get to where you already are. Through thinking it understands how to get there. When really that's just another form of trying to escape what's already here.
Or trying to get what I think I want in a different way.
Yes, which is missing what is already here.
Which is the timeless awareness.
Yes, the timeless nature.
Okay.
Stainless, pure nature of what is already here, which is always the case, which never goes anywhere. It's like when we relax into life, the relaxation that is natural is always present. Whenever we remember to recognize that there is just this natural, effortless awareness that we don't even have to try to get to, because it's always the case. It's like a stepping back into that without moving. When the ideas subside, even if ideas are arising, there can be the recognition of those ideas as simply unlocatable experiences. Can we find an idea?
So really all the things that we've learned to be true, whatever we've decided to be about ourselves, or isn't really what it is. Somehow we have to let go of that or unlearn that.
Or simply recognize that as an appearance. Simply recognize that there is something that recognizes that.
Okay.
Something that isn't a thing. That knows the experience of our having ideas.
Okay. And whatever that is then is basically learning to recognize itself.
It's already recognized.
It's got it, right. Okay.
But there is the apparent experiential recognition of that which is already recognized. And trusting that which is already recognized.
Listen to the tape, and then I guess this awareness experience.
Yeah, I had an awakening experience.
Okay.
Because as I see it, awakening experientially relates to the idea you have about who you are, which is seen to be simply an appearance arising in and as what you are. So awakeness is already awake, but within that awakeness there is the apparent appearance of someone who dissolves into that full wakefulness.
So wakefulness sees that.
Yes, and is one with that experientially.
Okay. And whatever that was, now let's go trying to be who it thinks it is. Is that?
The idea of trying to be something is already seen as an experience.
Okay. And then it's seen over and over again. I mean, if
awakeness sees that, experiences that, and there is an unfoldment, an apparent unfoldment relating to that.
Okay. So would you say that experience was the beginning of the unfoldment? No. It's been unfolding all along.
Yes, but it's the experiential recognition of that as an unfoldment. Okay. It's like life is seen as it truly is, which has always been the case. And then there is an apparent surrendering to that, which is always the case, time and time again.
Okay.
time-bound recognition of the timeless, which is seen as just an appearance also,
Okay.
in and as that which is already the case.
So now when you went, I assume at some point you went to bed and then got up the next day. I ask this because sometimes I'll look around, and the trees are, it's amazing, kind of this opening comes after meditating maybe, or just listening to somebody or something. And it's just amazing. It's like I know when I go to bed and wake up the next day, it's going to be gone. I mean, that's been the experience.
Okay.
So, but for you, so you went to bed at some point. When you woke up, what was it like when you woke up?
Well, I actually had quite a busy weekend, as I recall, following what had apparently been recognised. And so the mind was plunged into confusion. I was around people that were talking all the time. I was around, busyness. And it was almost as if what had been recognised and the experience were completely out of sync with one another, which is impossible. But because it was so radical, what had been recognised was so radical, so sudden, there was just all sorts of things that were getting thrown up by the mind experientially. So there was like a haze of confusion. And so even though that was seen as just confusion, that had to play itself out somehow. That had to go through a certain period of transition, which lasted many weeks and months actually.
Okay. So during that time there was confusion?
There wasn't confusion about what had been seen, but life as it was appearing to be very chaotic and confusing and problematic.
So not blissful?
No.
Okay.
There was a peace, but there was a lot of chaos happening simultaneously.
And this was basically happening involuntarily? Because you didn't will it to happen?
I don't know. I think life seems to create what we place our attention on. The idea we have about who we are, life seems to create those experiences based on how we believe them to be. And so there was the residual effect of that happening, which seemed to be in contradiction to what had been recognized.
Okay. So there's the recognition and then there's the apparent contradiction to the recognition.
I'm not saying it's the same for everybody.
Right, okay.
This is my experience.
Okay, that's good to know, yeah.
I think awakening manifests in different ways. There is what could be considered to be a very radical and sudden, time-bound experience, awakening to true nature, which can seem as if life is presenting in a way that is then contradictory to what has been experienced. There can seem to be an invisible recognition of life as it truly is. The active spiritual seeker, for example, who is seeking this recognition actively. And life is moving in accordance with that recognition. So it's like a seamless, timeless awakening. No memory-bound experience, and yet using memory one can look back and see that there was a time when one was actually not in alignment with recognition. And there can be momentary glimpses of awakening, and then the personality takes over again. So I think it very much depends on how that awakening experience appears to manifest experientially, as to then what happens in the unfoldment after that recognition.
So I guess one could talk to 100 different teachers and they would all have a different, or 100 different people who've awakened, you could say. They'd all have a different awakening experience.
Yes. The awakening is the same, irrespective, because you're waking up to life as it truly is. which is the timeless nature of life, and yet the way that experience of awakening seems to manifest can be very different, depending on the expression of that.
So the common thing is the timeless nature.
Yes.
Awareness.
Yes.
Of the timeless nature, or awareness as the timeless nature.
Realizing what life is and always has been. So pure awareness, pure presence. Losing the personal sense of self. Awakening to impersonal consciousness, which is always the case. And yet how that awakening experience, because awakening experiences always relate to the idea we have of who we are, that seems to take various forms experientially.
Is there, I could say, practical value in losing the personal sense of self?
Awakening has profound benefit to the human experience.
Okay.
And inherent qualities of our true nature are peace, love, joy, bliss, knowing that everything is always as it's meant to be. And so, experientially, it's about surrendering to that recognition and remembering that time and time again. It's a time-bound process that seems to open up into timeless nature. What a paradox.
Yeah. But for people who have like a chronic pain or the fibromyalgia, these, I guess for anything really, but these kind of illnesses, is there benefit?
Definitely. I think the primary benefit is to recognize that which is beyond appearance, first of all. And that isn't to diminish the fact that chronic pain can be very debilitating. But have we ever noticed, if we look in our direct experience, say if we cut ourselves superficially, for example, because the superficial cuts tend to be the most painful, right? Paper cut or something like that. And then we're immersed in a great movie, for example, or we're immersed in a great conversation, or enjoying ourselves. We can divert our attention to that experience rather than the paper cut. So when we place our attention on the paper cut, it hurts. And yet when we immerse ourselves in the experience of living whatever experience seems to be more enjoyable in that moment, we can lose the sense of hurt from the paper cut. And so this can actually be experienced directly when we are recognizing our true nature. There can be a focus on that which is beyond all experience, beyond chronic pain, primarily, which then can help to diminish any discomfort, any suffering that can be taking place. And secondarily, we can do whatever seems to be necessary. So if the body's uncomfortable, we can change our position, for example. We may need to go into a state of deep relaxation to allow the body to feel more comfortable in that way. We could take some painkillers if that is necessary as well. But primarily, the most important thing is actually experiential recognition. Secondarily, doing what seems to be required in the moment, so it isn't the absence of any conventional treatment.
Do you think things like, again, pain cause you to focus in on the...
It seems to create an illusory focal point that becomes the entire, consumes the entire experience. Whereas when we rest back in the timeless nature of ourself, suddenly there's a spaciousness around what seems to be experienced. Suddenly all sorts of possibilities open up that we're not missing when we have our blinkers and our focus on a particular experience. And so it's relying ever more deeply on the impersonal nature of life as a primary focus, beyond all cause. And then secondarily, doing what appears to be appropriate from that place of recognition.
Okay, so you shift your attention back, try to do the timeless awareness.
Yes,
away from.
Yes, that appears to be very powerful.
Okay.
Experientially, in terms of placing our allegiance on that which is always here, which is always stable, which is always awake, which is beyond any cause. And therefore, we're much better placed to move consciously within the experience.
Okay. And that's really true for any experience. Well, I guess any experience, good or bad, right?
Because we're going beyond while not escaping. So experience is inescapable. And yet we can choose where we place our attention. Like we can choose to focus on this beautiful orchid in this room. We can choose to place our attention on that. And yet, a few moments ago, that wasn't even noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Because the focus was on this communication between us. So our experience changes depending on where we place our attention.
Who or what is shifting our attention?
That's a very good question.
I got it down there.
Something that is not a thing
Mm-hmm.
appears to be experiencing everything that is here. And yet, when a thought appears to be the focus that seems to place attention in a certain way in the experience, as the experience.
Oh, okay. So you're saying a thought that is not a thing? Is that what you said?
Well, if we look at this directly, can we actually find a thought? And yet a thought seems to appear that grabs attention manfully. And a story is created around that thought, which seems to give meaning to the experience, which seems to colour and translate and attempt to understand what is being experienced, which seems to cause a distortion.
Distortion or the shift in the lens or the...
Yeah, based on what we believe that to mean, based on what we've learned from memory.
Well, I guess I was wondering there's some way we are able to shift our awareness around. Like I could shift my awareness to the outside of the room or behind me. But what is doing that?
Well, that's a very good question.
That's the good question. We don't really know, or does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter.
The fact that we can shift our attention and we can place awareness in any place is actually already seen. Something knows that there is attention being moved, seemingly. So what is that? Can we find that? Can that be located anywhere? Can that be known directly?
So something is moving attention, but there's also something that's aware that attention is moving.
Yes. So there is something beyond, well, not being separate from that which is moving attention. And that's what's being pointed to here. That whatever appears is seen. Wherever attention is placed is seen, is experienced, is inseparable from that which is experiencing it. Can we find the experiencer?
I think the right answer is no.
But without going to the mind in our direct experience now, can we find the experiencer? There is awareness and there is experience. Without awareness, no experience. Awareness is just a word that points to something, which isn't a thing, that is undeniably present and yet cannot be known or located.
So what I do is I stop confusing myself with thinking that I know what that is, or what that even could be.
Coming from a place of pure not knowing. Where is the experience of us sitting in the other room a few short moments ago, talking, drinking coffee? Where is that now?
Well, there's a memory of the experience.
Can we find a memory? If we look, we can recall that experience with thought.
Okay.
And that thought is appearing now. Can we find thought? Can we find the experience? All there is this, presence. And this experience.
So whenever I look for those things, I can never find them.
Even now in direct experience, can we find, without using memory, can we find ourselves? Can we describe ourselves?
Well, I feel a heart beating.
Is it a heart beating? Or is that a learnt idea? Is there just sensation, which is just a word?
Yeah, there's a sensation, or I would call it a pulsing in the field.
So there's just energy, we can call it that.
Right.
There is just experience happening without a cause, and something that is inseparable from experience sees and experiences that, is seamlessly one with that. And can we find that which is experiencing? If we really look closely.
Yeah, I'm not finding it.
In any moment, we can drop descriptions of the mind, and we can simply recognize that something is experiencing, something that isn't a thing is experiencing. In any given moment, there is experience. And there is something that knows experience. Something intimately experiencing that can't be separated from experience. That knows experience. That is experience. all pervasive and yet unlocatable, unknowable. If we can step back into that, which isn't a doing, it's really the absence of all doing.
Step back into the knowing?
Into the not knowing, we could say.
Okay.
Even if thought appears to be moving. To recognize that that is simply experiencing. We don't have to latch onto that. We don't have to believe that. We can simply allow it to be as it already is. With no labeling. Just allowing what is already allowed, what is already the case, to be as it is. Without interpreting, without translating what we think that experience means to the idea we have about who we are.
Without relating that to the idea of who we think we are?
Yes.
Okay. Right, there's something that keeps wanting to come back and do something with it.
Yeah, and just simply allow that. Because it's already allowed. Allow it to be as it is. Even the struggle, the resistance. The striving to understand. We can just allow even that.
Right. It is like all of that's happening after this. Doesn't it?
We could put it like that.
Right, okay.
But it is inseparable from this. Can we separate that from this? It's like trying to take blue out of the sky or salt out of the sea. Because it's just this. It's pure experiencing. And something that is nothing intimately knows that experiencing. It is itself.
Mm-hmm. So right now it seems like there's like a vast openness or peacefulness.
Tangible, right?
Yeah, tangible. Yeah.
And yet intangible.
Kind of.
Yeah, experientially. But can we find that?
No. And the question is, where did it come from? And the answer is it's always been here.
Did it come from anywhere, or is it simply always the case? Unmovable. Is it coming from anywhere? Is it going anywhere?
No.
What is it? Where is it?
Tell me a little about tapping into the vast intelligence then. What is that? I mean, what you're speaking now is coming not from what you read in a book somewhere.
There's hardly been any reading of books. And so, because the health challenge was creating an inability to read and concentrate, I was unable to read books. So, there is an apparent experiential recognition, and that is its own authority. It's alive right now, here.
Okay. So then that becomes a vast field of information.
Well, it's the absence of information and knowledge. It's the absence of understanding or attempting to understand, and resting in what is always here, which is undeniably present and yet unlocatable, untraceable, unknowable, always available, stable, pure.
The only reason I would know it's always available is because I would believe you that it's always available.
Well, experientially we can try. You know, when we relax, when there's the absence of stress and tension, the relaxation that is always here is very clear and obvious. And whenever we remember to naturally relax into that which is always here, has there ever been a moment where it is not obvious?
Has there ever been a moment when it hasn't been obvious that there's relaxation available?
Yes, when we remember to relax. When we naturally relax into the full relaxation that is always here, is that natural relaxation ever not available? It's always available. It's whether we notice it's available.
Okay.
And so there is no escaping that relaxation, only through the idea that there is stress. But when we remember to relax, relaxation is self-evident.
Is it fair to say that relaxation opens us up beyond the body?
If we close our eyes for a moment, without using memory, can we recall a body? Can we locate a body? Or is there simply just sensations? Unlocatable sensations, which, if we step back from the word sensations, we can use the word experience.
So yeah, there is experiencing.
And there is something that is not a thing that knows experiencing. In that place, that placeless place of experiencing, is there anything to understand about it?
Well, really, it has no questions.
Absolutely. So therefore it's the ultimate answer. And in that placeless place of natural relaxation, there is an open spaciousness. And instead of focusing on the experience, however it's presenting itself, and thinking that there is something that needs to be done, there is a natural openness in which all things get done, which there's a natural movement, conscious response rather than an unconscious reaction happening. Suddenly all sorts of possibilities open up. When we don't know, when we're resting in that which is unknown, to thinking that we do know, we're limiting our possibilities when we think we know. it seems to narrow experience down to a focal point and seems to try and impose an idea.
Right, that's what's wanting to happen, actually. Is for the mind to kind of go back now and figure it out or capture it. But it's also pretty clearly seen that the mind is like very small compared to this vastness.
Can we find a mind?
So, no.
So really, the mind is just an idea. Can we find an idea? Can we find thought which formulates the idea? We could say everyone experiences thought, and yet not one person is able to find a thought. Because it's simply experience in that which itself is unlocatable and unknowable.
Just this, it's like the blind man in a dark room looking for something that can't be found. I don't know, I heard that somewhere. I don't know.
And when we know nothing can be found, and everything is just as it is, where is the stress? Where is the problem? There is a natural expansion that was always here. It's like there is an opening up to the expansion. The aperture on the lens seems to widen.
Right.
It goes from the focal point on the experience and thinking what the experience means in relation to the idea of who we are, to complete not knowing. Opening up to the vastness of infinite possibility.
So then the practice would be, or could be, reminding yourself all the time that I can't find anything beyond experience and awareness.
And just whenever there is an apparent focal point in experience happening, to simply stop. Sometimes it can be beneficial to write down what we think the experience means, to really make it clear that this is where the distortion lies, the apparent distortion, and then deeply investigate that which is being believed. In relation to the idea of who we think we are, can we find that? Can we find that individual in our direct experience? If we close our eyes without going to memory, can we find this person? Or is there simply sensation happening, experience happening? And can we then find the idea?
Find the idea that I'm using to think that I'm something.
And know what the experience means? Or can we simply rest back in the natural openness that is always available and allow whatever it is to move in the way that it wants to move from a place of conscious clarity, clear attention, conscious attention, which opens us up to responding consciously to whatever seems appropriate, rather than unconsciously reacting from a place of conditioning and imposing our ideas on what we think should happen, which is limiting possibility experientially. There is a natural resource that is always available. We rest back there without moving, like an undoing like a letting go of the ideas and complete allowing what is already allowed. And then movement naturally arises from that place, this place, a possibility.
Okay, very, very good. I'm just totally relaxed, and no, it's a beautiful place, right?
It's always here, without being found. Therefore, it can always be relied upon as the stable, unlocatable basis for all experience to be.
Well, this seems so tangible. Like it's here.
Yes. But can we find it? It seems tangible,
Right.
and yet there is no way it can be located or found.
Okay. And so it's good to remind myself of that, too. That I can't find this.
Can you find the idea of who you are?
Not right now, I can't.
It's just experience.
Mm-hmm.
And does this natural openness, does it worry?
The natural openness doesn't know.
Worry can be experienced.
Right now there's a noticing of wanting to worry or wanting to do something mentally.
Okay.
I mean, it's more of a, almost seeing it rise up.
Okay. So another form of experience
Mm-hmm.
that the mind can label as worry.
But even that rising up is another form of the experience.
Yeah.
It's not separate from it.
Right.
That's new understanding
Right.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I think we're about towards the end of the time.
Okay.
Looking at the clock's right. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I appreciate it. Namaste. Very good.